Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining the Canadian Pine Pollen Community Conversation. And this week, we are exploring gut health. And Dr. Saeid is here to talk about how pine pollen and turkey tail mushrooms can support gut health. So, Dr. Saeid, welcome.
Thank you.
Why don't you share all your wisdom?
When you put it as wisdom, it becomes, I gotta step up on the pedestal. So, I'll give you some wisdom on pine pollen, reishi, and the gut health in general. Just a few key points to start with. I think would be the question: where does digestion start with? A lot of the basics of digestion is within the mouth. Like it comes to the idea of chewing, but chewing also goes with hand in hand with the idea of being able to be in a mental state of conscious of what you're eating and what you're putting in your mouth. In Chinese medicine, they often talk about um, the breath and what goes under it, which is the idea of your thoughts and emotions, and digestion in the same place goes along with um, the organs of the spleen, which is part of thinking and being pensive or in a meditative state. So digestion and being thoughtful goes hand in hand, which is one of the things why I love about pine pollen and the type of pine pollen that we are getting. It's the mindful aspect of that is um, it goes a lot of effort goes into getting it. So being conscious of that and knowing that what a blessing it is to have it in access to it in a way in the jar. So every time I take my pine pollen, which is my favorite way of taking it as a powder, is being aware of what's gone into it. So that's as the basic kind of foundation of digestion, which often gets neglected in a lot of ways of thinking or ways of addressing someone's digestive issues. So if I just say that as a way of foundation, then I can talk about pine pollen. So when you told me that the topic is going to be on digestive health, one of my favorite ways of researching things online is by looking at if there is any scholarly publications, any reviewed journals or articles that have like third party information, especially when it comes to using herbs and some of the lesser known aspects of herbal medicine. So if you just pop in, a lot of times it's just if I want to search something, I just pop in the word followed by scholarly articles, or Google has a scholar section where it searches PubMed, the National Institute of Health, some of the European journals all at once, and it gives you the search results, which is a really amazing way of looking at. So we've often talked about how pine pollen is in a tincture form is a really good medicine. But when it comes to the powder, the gut health component is where it really shines, and it differs from the alcoholic extract. So what does it do for the gut health? Obviously, again, if you're looking at it from a Chinese medicine standpoint, it resolves dampness, and it nourishes yin. Dampness is the idea of things becoming stagnant. So if you got damp in your digestive system, that's essentially inflammation, which if you got damp heat, that becomes infection. But if you got just general dampness, is inflammation. So knowing that historical understanding of the impact of pine pollen, the Chinese did a study on its impact in 2023 in namely ulcerative colitis, which is a irritable bowel disorder. And in fact, it's an irritable bowel disease. So ulcerative colitis is you get patchy inflammations that happen along the small intestine all the way to parts of large intestine. And the causation for it is oftentimes multifactorial, meaning that it can be there's definitely an observed change in the microbiome of the gut. So the balance between the different bacteria that are in the large intestine, but an overactive immune function as well. So a immune function that's in a fight and flight reaction is hitting itself and causing patchy inflammation within the digestive system. So they did a study with the polysaccharides, the sugar components of the pine pollen, the powder. And so a lot of times with these types of studies, before you study it on human subjects, you do it on animal studies. So this is actually it's an animal study with models of ulcerative colitis, meaning that they cause the disease in this case mice, and then they give them and then they study what's happening in their gut, and then they give them pine pollen, and then they study what happens afterwards to see what are the changes. And essentially what they found out is every marker, like the serum metabolites that they can measure for ulcerative colitis, changes. And they weren't sure if it was because pine pollen has anti-inflammatory effects, like all the pigments in there, the flavonoids are anti-inflammatory, or was it because of the sugars per se? And if it's for the sugars, then you're expected to see a change in your digestive microbiome, because sugar is typically what is a substrate for every bug in your digestive system. Of course, they use proteins and fat, but they chew up the sugar the most. Bacteria love to ferment, and typically what you ferment is a type of sugar. So the finding was a reduction of a couple of strains of bacteria that is found to be harmful in ulcerative colitis, and an increase in other types of bacteria that are beneficial, including lactobacillus. And the interesting thing about the powder pine pollen is that it has some lactobacillus on it as well. Not to say that the increase here is definitely because it's not because of the lactobacillus that's on live pine pollen. It's because of the sugar impact. But that's another interesting phenomenon about the pollen. So the other component of the digestive aspect of the pine pollen is that when you have this pollen in a shell, the electrical aspect of the pollen makes it really a magnetic type sphere. So you must have seen on our YouTube, not YouTube, on our Instagram, there is this one picture of like when you scoop the pollen from the jar or from with the spoon, it just kind of like it forms these almost like crystal-like things, right? It's almost like the same phenomenon that happens with your hair. If you rub it, it just you can make it stick up. So the pollen grain being so similarly shaped, rubbing against each other, it creates that magnetic aspect. And it's in nature, it becomes a sorbent, meaning that it pulls in things from external environment that tends to be higher in mass or volume, or have an opposite charge to them. So a lot of the charges, a lot of the molecules that are harmful in nature, so toxins, tend to be negatively charged. And pollen's got this positive charge of being able to draw them. So there is this one other experiment that they did with live pollen, like uncracked pollen, which they spread it over contaminated lakes as a way to see how much of the the contaminants, oil-based contaminants, it can absorb and it can hold within itself. So then they wash off the pollen and they're actually detoxifying the environment. And that's the other aspect of the eating the pollen, is that it does that in your digestive system. It becomes substrate for the different microbiome, the good bacteria in the large intestine. And then it's the portion of it that doesn't get fully broken down. Your digestive system is going to poke holes into it. It's got a really strong shell, so the shell doesn't get fully destroyed in the digestive system, but the digestive enzymes, the stomach acid, will poke holes in it and draw all the nutrients from it. But the shell that remains is also going to get loaded up with some of the toxins that are lurking in your digestive system and pull it out. So those are the two really cool things about taking the pollen. My favorite way of taking the pollen is just straight up in my daily tea. It's as a powder, it's a really good daily routine. There aren't many things that I can say you should be doing daily, but when it comes to, having access to this amazing natural forest food, and I think for us as harvesters or as people that go get it, really we're blessed to have access to so much of it. But ultimately, it's one of those foods that is limited and only a few people get access. Like if we, I was having a conversation the other day. I was saying, if we 10x our current production, and a kilogram is what you need per person for a year's supply of pollen, then at most we're going to supply for 10,000 people, and that is a very limited number of people. So it's a blessing to have it, and it's a great food. The other aspect of the powder is that it provides a lot of nutrients. So it's going to give you. It's loaded with minerals. It's loaded with everything that cell needs to germinate and create a long germination tube. Right? It's a live cell. It's biologically active, and once it starts germinating, it's like a seed. That's or your lentil or your plant source seeds that you can germinate. You can germinate pollen as well. So because of that ability, it packs a lot of other nutrients on it. All around, when it comes to digestive health, I think if one pearl to take away is the best state to be in to increase your digestive health is to be conscious of what you're eating and eating consciously. And when it comes to pine pollen, it is on the conscious level of it. It's a really it's a blessing to have a food with so many benefits, right? So being conscious of that when you have access to it is a key thing. And then very likely there's going to be more research like this that will come in the years to come, because it's such a novel source of food. I don't want to call it novel because we just came back from Germany, and in Germany they were saying, if you wanna get this recognized and imported, you gotta get some kind of certification for calling it novel food. And one of the Canadian commissioners there was saying, well, technically it's not a novel food because honey has been consumed for the longest time, and the pollen that is in the honey is a mixed source. So very likely some form of pine pollen has been in sale and in use prior to 1970, which is their criteria for something being novel or not. So if it wasn't food before 1970, it's new.
So your recommendation is to get the most benefit for our gut health is to take the raw pine pollen powder?
Raw pine pollen powder. That's the best. That's the best for the gut health. And the way to take it is if anything that's you're taking for the health benefits of it, if you're taking it twice in frequency or 3 times, it's a best best impact. But the reality of life is that it's tough to keep everything to 2, 3 times a day, right? So the best way to take the pollen is in some hot beverage. Um, you can mix it with other things like on yogurt and on smoothies, but the best way would be in a hot beverage, and it would be a half a teaspoon to 3 teaspoons, half a teaspoon to 3 teaspoons. So it can go, it's a big range. Again, what do you want to achieve with it? For how long do you want to achieve it? Um, is the key thing. Um,
And I'll also mention a lot of feedback that we've heard from our customers is that because our pine pollen is so pure and potent, that really test your dose to see what works for your body, because you can buy a cheaper pine pollen and it doesn't perform the same way as ours.
the the trials, the historical trials, and the traditional Chinese medicine references um, give it that range of 800 milligram to 3.6 gram. So it's a big range. I would say, for anyone to notice an impact with it, 1.6, so like 800 milligram twice a day, and 800 milligram is typically a half a teaspoon. So it's got a 1 to 3 ratio. So if you take 2.5 mil, it's roughly about 800 milligrams. Or so half teaspoon twice a day, or 1 teaspoon once a day. That would be where you can see an impact from it. Of course, you can take 3 teaspoons, or let's say if you're making cake with it, which one time we did, we did we took about a third of a kilogram of pollen and mix it up with some almond flour and made an awesome cake from it. This was in one of the years when we were harvesting, and we had a communal kitchen. So we made a cake, and that was good night. It was a good tasty night, good tasty expensive night with pollen.
I've also seen people making like pine pollen truffles.
Yeah, chocolate industry is another, and like chocolate is another way to get the pollen in you, and it's a good way of mixing it if you like to make the pollen. Because it's with the making of the chocolate, you give it that little bit of heat as well to actually give you the flavor. The aroma of the pollen really comes out when you heat it. So in traditional Korean cuisine, and there's a cake, there's a little pastry that they make. What's the name for that? We have this on our website, Yannick or Yasik. But as soon as it gets heated, it gives out that really nice aroma because it's pretty blend. Like you can mix that into anything and everything, and like I said, it goes well with your yogurt, even cold things. But what do they call this traditional Korean? Dasik. It's called dasik.
We'll share the link in the chat. I'll go look for that for everyone.
Yeah, it's so it's little kind of like tiny pastries, a toonie sized, that they add color obviously to it and mix it with other things. So with red beans, they make it, they mix it with matcha, they mix it with coconut, all sorts of different flours, but it's the main ingredient is pine pollen, and it's a seasonal delicacy that they use.
And this week in our email newsletter, I focused on the turkey tail tincture. And in the research, it also mentioned how turkey tail mushrooms are good for gut health and reducing inflammation. So anything you want to kind of touch on for turkey tail too, Saeed?
Yeah, so turkey tail is similar concept. It comes down to the sugars of the turkey tail. So that was another study that was done. We know turkey tail as a mushroom, it has immune modulating properties, so it helps anything related to the immune system, and that immune modulating comes from the sugars. One of the interesting thing about immune modulation in general and the gut health is that there is this triad of your nervous system, your hormones, and your digestive system. And the whole and when it comes to the digestive system, is really the bugs, right? Anything immune related gets modulated through those three systems. So turkey tail being immune modulating substance, one of the things they researched for was to see if it actually has an impact on the bottom layer, which would be the gut and the microbiome. And similar kind of concept, it increases the good bacteria in the digestive system and improves the ratios between the good and the not so good, the beneficial versus the commensal or the pathological bacteria. And that research was in particular with C. diff. C. diff is Clostridium difficile is a condition that often shows up after multiple antibiotic use because it wipes out your gut flora. The good flora gets wiped out, and whatever residual bugs are left there, they get a chance to actually grow. And sometimes it happens in hospital settings where you have immunocompromised individuals and it comes up. So turkey tail is really good for balancing the probiotic component of the gut after such an immune infection, and in general improving the immune outcome post C. diff. And it's because of it's got those polysaccharides, those sugars that can help balance out the foundation of your gut health.
Thanks so much for sharing, Dr. Saeid.
One thing maybe I wanted to say, I hope it's not. They say when you're planning something, don't get too excited about it prematurely. But without getting too excited prematurely, the college, the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine, when they got a hold of the research study with the gut microbiome and pine pollen, they were excited about the fact that we're producing it locally and it's not an imported product. So they wanted to do a research with us, a research project. A lot of times these research projects can take 2-3 years, but so the first steps would be to do some individual lab work pre and post consumption, and look at some andropausal, menopausal hormone levels and see if there's an impact, or even some of the basic liver panel, cholesterol panel, because the powder, it reduces cholesterol as well. And that does that in human beings, in human trials. That's one of the things that's been tested for cardiovascular health. So they're interested to, after this study for gut health, they're interested to do a gut study on pollen and see if it has improvements for IBD and IBS, irritable bowel disease. Irritable bowel disease is a really costly disease for the healthcare system. Oftentimes the patients need to be on medication for long term, and it's a progressive disease, like, because it's an autoimmune disease. You think of MS and Parkinson's, they're all autoimmune, and irritable bowel disease is autoimmune, and oftentimes autoimmune diseases are progressive and get worse and worse and worse and worse, no matter how much medication you do. And then finally they get to the place of, let's cut those chunks of the large intestine that are inflamed and make your small intestine shorter and shorter, which reduces the nutrients delivery for the person, which is again increases that downhill decline. So they are managed with medication, with costly medications, with biologics, oftentimes for long term, and then finally the person will succumb to it at a shorter lifespan. It's one of the few things right now, because of that there's a lot of government budgets for researching it for irritable bowel disease. So excited about that project, but it's a couple of years in the making. Hopefully, in the next few years, we'll get some results out of that.
So thanks to everyone on the call today. You heard it here first, the cutting edge pine pollen research. Does anyone have any questions that you'd like to share about gut health? Anyone? If not, you can always shoot us an email, info@canadianpinepollen.com. And yeah, just thanks everyone for showing up. You can always watch our videos that we've had if you've missed a week on our YouTube channel. And we're here to support you with any questions. If you have any ideas of topics that you'd like us to cover, it's a great opportunity to explore different questions. Our customers are really important. We want to help provide the information that we can to everyone, and doing these community conversations have been really helpful. So yeah, thanks for participating, and we'll see you again next week. Thanks, Dr. Saeid.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any questions? We still got time.
I really appreciate all the information that you so freely share. I took I took 5 pages of notes. So, you know, I really do like to be conversant on this when I'm telling people about it, and you help so much. And this is just, I had a note here that I meant to ask you. Oh, dampness equals inflammation. And then damp heat is infection, dampness, inflammation. And so this, the pine pollen has an effect on that.
Yeah, one of the traditional Chinese Chinese medicine is, you know, an observational type medicine. And a lot of the lingo and the language in that is used to diagnose, but diagnose for the sake of figuring out what to use for that diagnosis. So the end goal of the diagnosis is what kind of a plant can up and down what we are diagnosing. So it's based on this idea of obviously, like, the most common understanding that everybody has is the yang and the yin, or the yin and the yang, right? And then the excess and the deficiency, right? Yin and yang, excess and deficiency, and then internal and external. So, like, pretty much everything within the healthy system is, you know, it's a combination of different, you know, excesses and deficiencies, the yins and the yangs, and the internal and the external. And then that pattern happens within the organ systems, that some of them correlate with the conventional organs of the spleen, lung, and the large intestine, and the heart, and so on. And then some of them correspond to the functions of the immune system, such as the governing vessel and whatnot, which is not happening in an organ system, right? Damp, in particular, is an excess of fluid. It's an internal condition, but it can be coming from external sources, and it is associated with a deficiency of flow. Okay, and then if it's yang, it's an external condition that is an excess condition. So the bacterial overgrowth, right? So it can be in a yang scenario. It has an outside source, whether it's a bacteria or, let's say, a toxin. In an internal state, it's a chronic inflammation that is a stuckness and lack of movement. So pine pollen resolves dampness, and if, you know, in one way to think about it, if it's an internal condition, it's inflammation because of lack of hormones, because of the aging process, because of lack of circulation. And then if it's an external condition, oftentimes for eczema and skin eruptions and whatnot, it's been traditionally used to resolve pimples and bed rashes and diaper rashes, which is an excess heat presentation. The other thing about pine pollen is that it works on the lung meridian and the heart meridian, so it improves circulation, right? By the virtue of increasing circulation, nourishing the heart meridian and improving circulation, you're increasing blood flow to areas that are under circulated, so damp areas or inflamed areas. And because it nourishes the chi, which is the vital force, it's also improving the hormones, which again feeds back to this cycle of hormones up, circulation better, digestive system better overall, resolving and improving movement, which is taking away inflammation and dampness. There is a lot, like a lot of in a way, a lot of the traditional Chinese medicines diagnoses related to chronic diseases involve dampness, and typically they begin as dampness within the small intestine and the spleen meridians, which is oftentimes related to lack of movement and lack of proper nutrition. So that's the main source. But the age component of dampness is essentially declining in hormones, therefore less movement and less flow and more sagging of the tissue.
Makes sense. Yeah.
That was a really good question, John.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So just to clarify that, then the powder would be the benefit, provide the benefit over the tincture.
The powder has that benefit over the tincture for the digestive component, for sure. You know, again, not to take away from the tincture, because this study that they did with the mice was the tincture component of the polysaccharides, right? The human trial with the heart and the blood sugar and the lipids and the liver function was on human trials, but of the powder itself. But the mice trial that they did with ulcerative colitis, they made a tincture and they just separated the sugar, the polysaccharide component of the tincture, and then they fed that to the mice. So it was more of targeted medicine. And another thing what they did, you know, John, unfortunately, when it comes to research with herbs, the reason there's not a lot of money in it is because you can't patent things, right? So if you could patent it, you can then sell that. That would be great. So one of the other things they did in this research is they took those polysaccharides. So they made the tincture, they separated the polysaccharides, and then they came in and chemically added a sulfur group to those polysaccharides, and then compared that sulfur group versus the non-sulfur group polysaccharides to see which one has a better impact, right? Now we know that sulfur it helps improve liver function and detoxification. So the sulfur group, the sulfur chemically altered polysaccharides perform a little bit better than the polysaccharides. Now, you know, if somebody was to market that component, they can, because it's a patented process to make a sulfur group of that.
Interesting.
It's going down the rabbit hole. And with Chinese medicine, if you're interested to read more, there's a really good book called the Web That Has No Weaver. Because it's and the premise of the book is to get the full picture in Chinese medicine of what is going on, specifically here. You literally need to get the full picture of everything before you can understand what is going. So like you need to understand the entire person before you can come into a diagnosis of what is going on, whether that's a mental, emotional, digestive, lifestyle, belief state of the person, which is really cool. It's an awesome book.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's so much great information, Dr. Saeid. And
Yay.
can you share a little bit about the app that you're going to be launching soon? Because I think that it might be, people on the call might be interested.
Yeah. So fingers crossed. You know, it's been a long time wish in the work to have an educational app that can supplement my practice with patients, and create a space for them to be able to ask questions as along their journey of health, but also to be able to impart some of the one-on-one conversations and consultations that happens, but they're repetitive. So some of the Q&As, some of the one-on-one individual coaching when it comes to diet and nutrition, and the questions around certain conditions, and a better understanding of their own health. So it's been a long time wish to make an app or a course outline where I, in a way, open a window to how to think like a naturopathic doctor about your own health and become preventative component of it, and take early investments of time and money into preventing certain diseases from coming on. So and Maria's is going to help me shoot those videos and put them together, and hopefully initially we can go live in live sessions and do 15-20 minutes conversations about specific topics, and then have a Q&A component to it to build up. And Maria, when do you think we're going to launch that?
Oh, now that we're saying it out loud, we have to be accountable to like making it happen. So
Is that how we plan and execute projects? That that there was a Harvard study about that. Actually, they say, you know, when you plan and do something, better not to talk about it before you execute it. Literally, they had
we're
two
speaking it
groups.
into existence.
They had two groups, and they had to come up with a project, and they came up with a project, and then they told the first group, don't tell anyone, just go out there and do it. And they told the second group, go and tell as many people about this project. There's so much excitement around it. Build the excitement so that you can get it done. And this group actually did it. And the ones that talked about it, the brain, it became for the brain as if that task is already accomplished. They talked so much about it that the brain didn't have motivation to actually carry it out. So
Oh no, my plan backfired.
Wow.
yeah, that's why I was hesitant about mentioning the research on the pollen, right? Because it's a couple of years of planning and due diligence in order to actually make it happen. But we'll do it, Maria. We'll do. I know we'll do it. This one has been in 2 years in the making, John. It's I've been saying 2 years. Well, the last 2 years, I want to make these courses.
No, it's going to happen, and the world really needs to focus on like getting more education about health, nutrition, food, and I think people are really aware of our kind of the culture of being dependent on certain like band-aids for health. So we need to take more responsibility for our own health.
Yeah.
And education is key, and sharing with our friends once we gain that knowledge. So thanks to everyone for showing up and joining us as we learn and share. And please stay in touch. And next week, we will be having an interview with Sheila, who makes our soaps.
Oh, yeah.
And does anyone on the call have you used our soaps?
I've used it a while ago, some time ago, before it changed to the new format. And I had the one which I really loved, which had the little abrasive things in it, the husks in it. And I liked that very much. It was very nice to just use it on my skin without a washcloth or
So
anything.
you like the exfoliating.
Yes, and yeah, and I like the you know, it sort of really brings blood to everything, to the skin and everything, and I enjoyed that. I didn't find it to be too much. I found it to be just right. And the sudsing is wonderful. Of course, the scent is amazing, and I enjoyed the sudsing as well. Those little bars went a long ways. They definitely did.
So I believe, Andrea, your spruce, I think that's the one you last ordered. The spruce
Mhm.
soap is on its way. It's going to come in a couple days. I just checked
Oh,
when we were
yeah.
on the call.
Yeah, yeah. Yes,
And
thank you for checking.
this bar, I typically cut into 4. So I cut it in half, and then each side I cut in half again. And I put some in my
Okay.
bathrooms, and I have one in my kitchen. And just this week, I was cooking and there was something like really oily, and just my dish soap wasn't cutting the oil. So I off my hands, and I grabbed my soap, and this soap cut it, like cut through the fat, the grease that was stuck on my
Oh.
hand, and worked so much faster than the dish soap that I was using to try to wash my dishes. So
Wow,
it
that's
was,
amazing.
yeah, it's really good.
Pure natural products. That's I love that whole idea.
And I really love using products that have less water. So I try not to buy like liquid dish soap or liquid laundry soap, because you're just paying to transport water. And so I try to buy a concentrated or a dry product. So
That makes sense. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. And you can use the soaps for hair, body, face, shaving, pets. You
Yeah,
ought to try it on your pet, Andrea. Every week you ask about us making a pet version. So when you get your soap, try washing your dog.
yeah, yeah. I actually found a pet version of a um uh mushroom tincture. Yeah, it has 4 different mushrooms in it. One I didn't recognize, and the other one's a chaga and reishi. And what is the one that provides some energy and oxygenation? Um, I think lion's mane. I'm
Nice.
anyway, so it is, and thanks to Dr. Saeid, I was able to really discern if I wanted to purchase this or not. And it's triple water extracted, and which I think is important. And what was the other part? Triple water extracted, and fruiting body only. Yeah. So
That's great.
yeah. Yeah, I'll be so happy to check out what I have coming in the mail. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. We'll see you again. Thanks
Yeah.
for joining.
Yeah, I'll be here next week. Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.